go live button. Got it. Is being live streamed. All right, Godspeed, gentlemen. All right, let me just make sure this is coming up on my end. And it is. Look at that.
Okay.
Everyone's there. All right, gentlemen, let's do this. Hey, Banditos, welcome to the latest episode of the Dollar Bin Bandits. I am Joe Marcello.
I'm Warren Phillips.
I'm Mike Farah.
And I know this is a little out of the ordinary for us, but we are live today, and we are joined by none other than legend Mark Waid. How are you, sir?
Speaking. That's good. That's very flattering, but thank you. I'm good. All good.
No, that's how we roll here for the #1 Superman fan.
Okay, there you go. Okay, fair enough.
Thank you so much for joining us. It's an absolute pleasure. This is the third time we've had the pleasure of speaking to you, so we appreciate you coming back for yet again.
Of course.
And for everyone who is listening, we are discussing Mark's new project, the Shazam series, which is out already and absolutely just so much fun to read. So we definitely recommend that you guys go out and check it out. We are
Let me interject real quick. Dan
Yes.
Mora is on his way. I just got the email.
Okay, great. So
keep an eye out. Okay.
sounds good. So we're going to kick it off. We're not going to ask our usual question that we always do, how you discover comics, because we covered that. Today, we're going to ask basically, why Shazam and why now?
Sure. Although, feel free to ask Dan what brought him into comics, because I'm not sure I know that answer.
We'll hit him up afterwards and get a whole all Dan episode.
I think there was a movie out, and so I hear, and DC's really smart about making sure there's stuff on the stands that matches movies. But beyond that, I mean, everybody knew that I'd had a Jones for this character for a long time, and didn't have a lot figured out. Honestly, it's not like I had a raft of Shazam stories in my back pocket. It was just more, I liked the character, and I always knew I could do something with it if I got my hands on it. And so, about a year ago, actually, Paul Kaminsky, who was our world's finest editor and also the editor of Action Comics, contacted Dan and me and said, how about we do something on the sly? Let's do it secretly. Let's build a Shazam feature that we can throw in the back of Action Comics maybe, or something. And so we've been working on it for like a year, just a few pages here and a few pages there. And then at some point it was decided, well, World's Finest is doing well enough. Let's just go ahead and turn it into its own book.
Sounds good. Now, I something that you mentioned, since there is a movie out, was this time to come out at this time, basically, so that it kind of coincided with the release of the movie and stuff?
I mean, probably. It wasn't like a super calculated, steepled fingered publishers making cold decisions. It was also the sense that, we should have that character in print. I mean, so there were a bunch of different factors. I'm sure that was a factor, but it was also, look, there should be that book should be on the stands somewhere. Right. That character should be out there. Okay, Dan is an avatar right now.
Dan, are you
if
here?
You can hear us.
Do you hear me?
Yes.
I can hear you.
We can hear you.
Can't see you.
We don't see you.
I'm here. Okay, let me see.
Is that there we go.
There he is.
Hey,
you are.
Dan Mora, everybody.
Thank you so much for joining us, Dan.
No, thanks to you. I'm so sorry.
No, not a problem at all. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your schedule, because I know you're cranking out comics for Mr. Mark Waid here. And he was telling us all about what you were just working on. Held it up. No, he didn't.
Show him pictures.
No, he didn't do any of that. But we were just discussing, basically why Shazam, why you guys decided to do Shazam, and why now. So Mark gave his 2 cents. What can you tell us about working on Shazam right now?
Well, I didn't know too much about Shazam at the beginning. So I think Mark is like teaching me the importance of the character and why it is such an important character. So I'm beginning to understand and to like it. So it's very fun, and I like the journey and the process, and to be learning everything about the world of Shazam. So it's very nice. And Mark he is a great writer. So he always makes me smile when I'm drawing. So that's something that I really appreciate.
That's,
I,
that's
I,
fantastic.
you're very kind. Thank you. And by the way, it's, back to you saying, obviously, I love working with you. So, and we should talk about, you mentioned process. We should talk about this. It's with World's Finest, it's different than it is with Shazam. With World's Finest, I do a full script and give it to Dan. But with Shazam, I asked Dan, who's such a great storyteller on his own, do you want to just do plot dialogue? That way he has a lot more control of the pacing, the storytelling, and the moments and stuff. And Dan, you seem to have run with that pretty well.
Yeah, it was something different. I didn't expect that, and I didn't knew that I could do it. It was something I never tried that, but it was fun, and I think it worked. So I just hope people like it because
it totally works. Yeah.
Yeah, I when we started, I wanted to say that I really enjoy this issue. I've been a fan of Shazam. I will, I'm really tempted to call him Captain Marvel.
I do it all the time. Yeah.
And it comes up in the both in the movie and in this issue. But it was so much fun. It was just a really fun read. The art is fantastic. And the story, I'm totally hooked. So it's a great first issue.
Thanks. Who makes us look good too is Alejandro Sanchez, the artist, the colorist. He's great. It's so funny. Oh, yeah. I mean, we have two different people coloring. One, Tamara Bonvillain's coloring Dan on World's Finest, and Alejandro on Shazam. Completely different looks. I think, right, Dan? Just they feel like completely different looks to them.
Yes. People think that I'm doing something different, but it's not me. It's the colors.
Yeah, but they look great.
Yeah, they look great. Yeah.
I think they're appropriate to each different, tone and book.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. See, Alejandro gives like a new life to my drawings, something different, a different perspective. And I really like it. It's not very often that I like a new colorist, being honest. And Alejandro is just great. And I love Tanra, but I love Alejandro too in a different ways. It's something I don't know how to explain.
He does something really subtle and interesting, which is if you look at the book and look at the upcoming issues, the captain's the only character in red, the only thing in red in the whole book, as I remember. I don't know if he doesn't color anything else red, which I like. Helps him pop.
Okay, I didn't notice that.
Yeah, cool. Go back and take a look. Yeah,
I have to go back and look now.
Yeah, that's cool.
As far as the look of the character, you guys have kind of gone more with the classic look as opposed to some more modern incarnations of the character. Was that done on purpose? And what did you want to bring Dan to the character as far as your art goes?
We were doing World Finest, so I think I was like in the mood of these classic characters. So when I started working on Shazam, I was thinking the same. So I just did DC never told me, or Mark or I don't remember if they told me the costume that he should use. So I just did the one that I think was the coolest. And that was it. It wasn't like too much head into it. Just there was something that I just thought that it will be cool.
Now, Mark, was that the vision that you had in your mind, what he came up with when you were doing this?
It was. Yeah, I would say, although the vision was in my mind was dictated more by his take than vice versa.
Gotcha. Makes sense.
I wanted to back up to the beginning for both of you. Dan, you already got into this a little bit, which is probably more recent, but both for you and Mark, what was your first memory, if you can remember, of getting to Captain Marvel, of basically reading him or knowing that he existed? And can you remember your sort of first impressions of the character and what you thought?
I'm not sure if I remember my first time, but I know that I think the time that I I think maybe was in the Justice League animated series.
Mm-hmm.
I think he was in one episode and he was fighting Superman. I think that that maybe was one of the first times, but I'm not sure. But I like it. I like what I saw. It was cool, and he was a kid. Yeah, but I to be honest, I can remember the first time. It's something that you know that you had in your head for a long time, but can't remember the first time.
I can, because I was 10 years old. I mean, so anything that happens to you when you're that age, it's like the golden age of comics for you. So I was, one of the purchasers of Shazam #1 back in 1973, and I was on board immediately. I mean, DC at that point had really pumped up in advertising and promotion and stuff. They really made us salivate for that thing, and fans were really hungry for that. And I love that comic, and was really in love with that. I didn't know the character before then. I'd heard of him in like old, comics history books and stuff, but I didn't know the character. But I read that character, and I just love the innocence. I love the purity and the tongue-in-cheek sort of sense of humor to it that wasn't like any other DC comic at the time. I fell in love with that character instantly.
Yeah, that's something I find very endearing about the character is, he's a child with gifted these superhuman powers. And I think as a kid, you're always thinking, well, what would I do? This is what I would do if I had the, basically Superman's powers. And, it's one of the things that I kind of enjoyed about the movies, but then I got a little annoyed with after a while. They went a little overboard. But
about 4 hours of it, yeah. It actually helped remind me to steer a little away from that. If you maybe more in upcoming issues, but if you take a close look at Billy's voice in the book and the captain's voice, I'm making an effort to give you a little subtle difference, so that the captain is not as wacky, or not as as much as I love Zach, Levy, I not quite that goofy.
Yeah.
Billy can be, but I think the captain is a little more. He's still Billy, but and he still thinks of himself as the same person. But I just want there to be a little more maturity to him when he turns into the captain.
Yeah, I agree with that, and I enjoy that part of it. I mean, I think when comics take themselves too seriously, obviously depending on the storyline and the characters, okay, it's fine, but after a while, like, lighten the hell up, man. And the opposite is true. Too much of that is a little off-putting, but there's a nice balance. So I know we keep referring to him as the captain, and not going into the whole history of rights and this, that, and the other, because I know if you go to an Alamo draft house and seen either Shazam or Captain Marvel, they have these whole, vignettes beforehand and kind of break it down. So it's really interesting. That being said, is there any type of loosening of rights as it pertains to calling Shazam Captain Marvel? Because they kind of hinted at it or mentioned it, or there was in the movie, and then now in the comic. Well, I'm like, are we going there, or is this gonna happen?
Here's the thing. I think technically we could say it in the comic, but the problem becomes that you merchandise that character. You put him in cartoons, you put him in movies, you put him on beach towels, you put him in action figures, and you can't call him Captain Marvel outside the pages of it. You can't call him Captain Marvel on the cover of a comic or anything like that, because Marvel has that locked down. So it's really, I think the reason they changed the character's name to Shazam about 10 years ago, which finally pulled that Band-Aid, was just for brand recognition. And I chafed against it because I don't like a character who can't say his own name out loud.
Yeah.
I appreciated that about the first issue, that you're putting it down on paper. Why we are going back to at least the Captain, if not Captain Marvel, is because simply it's illogical for him to try to refer to himself as Shazam.
Yeah. So like I've said, it's not like you're not going to see like him called the Captain on beach towels and action figures or anything like that. It's really just more of an in comic, tongue in cheek thing. But it was the best we could do. I mean, even Captain Thunder is somebody's trademark right now. So there weren't a whole lot of straws for us to grasp at. So,
and it's not like he has a friend named Tennille that's going to come in too. So
I'm a big Doctor Who fan. So I just thought of it as like the Doctor just calls himself the Doctor.
Right.
I'm doing all the talking and Dan is not being allowed to do any of the talking, and that's not fair.
Sorry.
I'm not very good at talking, so that's okay.
This is one that both of you can jump in on, is that I know we're really sort of at step one, but as steps go forward, could we see like the Marvel family or Mastermind, some of the original characters start to creep up and take a role in the series?
Yeah, I absolutely. I don't want to write the kids out, the other Shazam family members out, but it's difficult to write that character having adventures if everybody else in his family has the same superpowers, because then why aren't they a part of every adventure? And I really needed to drill down on him. I generally do that. If you look at my history, I tend to do that when I take over a book, which is just move the supporting cast to the side for a couple of 3 issues so I can really get the feel of the main character and really nail that down, and then start bringing them back in. So yeah, the kids show up in issue 2, and the other villains will be popping up sooner than later. I don't know if Dan has any particularly itch to draw Mr. Mind or Savannah. I have no idea. Dan?
I don't know. I know the bad guy from the movie. That's all I know.
But Dan, would you be interested in exploring the rest of the family and their identities and the way that they're going to look aesthetically on the page?
I'm open to everything that Mark wants to do, because that's something that I really think that when I'm working on the pages, sometimes I'm not sure where it is going, and every time I trust Mark, I'm really happy with everything, with the results and with the process. Even if the ideas are maybe too crazy or something like that, he make it work. So if he wants to include everyone, and that's okay. I'm happy. Maybe I want to draw like Mary, because I like to draw the girls, the ladies. That's something I like to draw, the woman. So that's something it will be nice to do.
Oh, we'll definitely bring her in sooner than later. She's the only one now with Shazam powers besides Billy, and as you saw in Lazarus Planet, now she has those powers, but they're given to her by different gods. So
I have a bit of a sort of follow-up for Dan, or actually a follow-up to what we were talking about earlier in terms of the comparison of World's Finest and Shazam. It seems like, World's Finest is very much rock'em sock'em adventure. They're always in their costumes, very bright. And that's not to say that Shazam is not very bright in terms of, coloring and levity and things like that. But Shazam, tells a more personal, I think, more emotional story, at least, based on issue 1. Is it really interesting for you, Dan, to sort of go back and forth between the sort of two worlds and the two tones? Do you like to do, a little bit more of the adventuring and then over here a little bit more of the world building?
Sorry, my kid is here. He's saying hi.
Hi. He's busy
Hi.
eating
Hi.
Okay. Vaya, mi amor, vaya. I, I don't know, but I think maybe in my head, I think I don't separate the comics, Shazam and World Finest. Sometimes it's a mix in my head, like it was only one issue, and sometimes I draw Shazam and World Finest. But I think one of the difference or one of the difficulties from Shazam is to draw the kids, that the children. That's not something easy for me to draw the little guys and the heads and the eyes. That's something I struggle. So that's like one of the things that I think it's very different from World Finest, because in World Finest I have these muscular guys and and everything, and Shazam I have the hero obviously, but to draw the kids, that's something that it's like very difficult to me. So I'm trying to do it right. Maybe
It doesn't show. I mean,
I was going to say the
looks
same
great.
thing. Yeah, I
Absolutely.
think the kids look
it's
very
it's
natural.
very difficult to be to draw Billy the same age in every panel, because sometimes it's a little,
Right.
it's like older, sometimes he's younger. So that's something that it's very difficult. With teens, I think I don't have
see it.
I don't have a problem, but with kids, it's a little bit difficult.
I don't think so. I mean, I don't see it. I think that I've never noticed that Billy seems older or younger in these panels. I think maybe you're your own worst critic on this.
Maybe.
We've seen that a lot, incidentally, in a lot of these interviews. Mark, I'm curious, somewhat in the same vein, like when you're writing back and forth, and you already explained that you're doing different process for each book, but in terms of going back and forth between them, are you flexing different muscles in terms of what you bring to the two books?
Yeah, I mean, I think the World's Finest is a little more serious a book. It certainly has its lighter moments and its funny moments, but it's a trickier beast because the Shazam book is happening in continuity at DC right now, right? So that means it counts to fans. Whereas something like World's Finest, that is not, it's in continuity, but it's not set in the here and now, right? It's not affecting other books. It's easy for fans to look at that and go, oh, that doesn't really count as a, you know what I'm saying?
Yes.
So that means I have to treat World's Finest a little differently. I have to make sure that it doesn't go too crazy or too wacky so that it looks like a goofy book, because that would it can be fun, but it can't be so much fun in a humorous way that people just don't take it seriously, because then I think it's sunk at that point. Whereas with Shazam, we can just go nuts and have Gorilla City show up if we want. Dan, did you know you were having to draw gorillas? Did we send you the issue 3 yet?
Surprise!
I haven't read it, but I have
Gorillas.
to work on the cover, and I have to do some gorillas in space for the cover, so that's something weird. But
yep, gorillas in
cool.
space.
Yeah.
Once you start with space dinosaurs, I mean, you can go anywhere, right?
Yeah.
Yep, pretty much.
Yeah.
The dinosaurs are only there because Paul wants them. Or Paul is our editor. For some reason, Paul has a dinosaur itch that he just needs scratched. And so, Dan, the only reason he's in the book is because Paul made you put him on the cover to issue 2 or whatever it was, right? There was one cover, an alternate cover or something where the dinosaur's there. Anyway.
Yeah, I think
dinosaurs are awesome.
Yeah.
Dinosaurs are just cool. I mean,
so then we had to sort of crowbar the dinosaur into the series, but we're in that to be a blessing in disguise, because that character is a lot of fun as he shows up in issue 2. Not the family from the first one, but in issue 2, somebody else from that planet comes along with a grievance, and that's kind of where that goes.
Okay. Dan, do you just basically crank out work 24/7?
Yes.
Okay. So you don't sleep at all.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
how
not
many
too much.
How many? Okay, well, good. How many? How many? And you don't have to say because I know you probably couldn't mention it right now. But how many other comics are you working on currently, or is it? I mean,
No,
this is
right.
currently the most important, but
Yes, right now I just finished TMT on Power Rangers, and so right now I'm just working on Shazam and World Finest. So that's my only two books.
really
But
fun series.
there was a moment when I was uh, doing the three books, so that
Wow.
was very hard.
Wow.
But that I finished.
Do you
but all
think?
good.
Do you think you could do 3 books on a regular basis, or was it just that period of time?
No. I think it's very difficult. It's not good for my head or for my everything. For my
Right.
family. I did it because I like it. I love the Ninja Turtles, and I love the Power Rangers, and I love Shazam, and I love
Perfect.
Batman, Superman. So that's something that I really enjoy, but I can't continue doing 3 books per month. It would be it's too
Okay.
much.
All right.
That was a fun series too, by the way. I was really big fan of that.
Thank you.
So I know we've mentioned Lazarus Planet, Alpha and Omega being the most important too, obviously. How much of an effect does that have on this series? I know it's mentioned and it's referenced because it kind of changes status quo magic wise. And will we have to kind of really dive into all those back issues of Lazarus Planet to really kind of get the gist of what's going on for this series?
No, not really. I mean,
Okay.
no, I mean, I wouldn't, I wouldn't say don't read them because I also wrote those. So please.
No, I know.
But,
and I'm reading them.
I know, but they're not, but we cover it in like one panel in issue 1, which is that the Lazarus Planet event has changed magic a little bit in the DC universe. And that's why the other kids don't, that's why Billy can't share his powers right now. He would love to, he's trying to figure out a way to, but he can't. And that was basically set up in Lazarus Planet. Other than that, no, I really want to keep this book something that you can read on its own, that kind of exists out in this corner of the world and, has its own tone to it.
And it definitely does that because, I've really enjoyed Shazam over the past few years, but there've been some major kind of, reboots, every few years. So things change, whether it was Dark Knight's Metal or, this event or that event. So major things happen to the character and things change. And I think for a while he was trapped in the Rock of Eternity for a while, kind of being guardian of that, and he couldn't come out. So I like where this is going because I was bummed at how heavy that character was becoming. And this series reminds me of the Batman Brave and the Bold series cartoon that was out, which I just plowed through with my son. And there are a few episodes that focus on Captain Marvel. I'll say Captain Marvel.
Yeah.
And it just had that classic feel to it. It had Mary Marvel. It had
Junior. Yep.
The other, yes, Captain Marvel Jr. And it was just that classic tiny dot-eyed look and feel, and this really kind of has that same feel to it, and it was fun. And I have I wouldn't let my son, not that he couldn't, but I wouldn't let my son read some of the other stuff that came out because he'd probably I don't get this, but he would really enjoy this series. So
good. I'm glad to hear.
Yeah, it's fun stuff. Now, are we going to? I know we touched on it. We're going to see other the Marvel family, but there have been other characters that were brought up in past series of Shazam. I think they even brought in his father at one point. Is he still bopping around somewhere?
I have to go look. I'm blanking on that for a second. I know I've read the stories. I read what Jeff did. I don't remember if his father's still out there somewhere.
Okay.
I'm sure right now people are typing furiously in the comment section to let us know.
Guys, I'm watching you. There is anyone? No? Okay.
No.
All right. No. Okay. Sorry. That was it. That was just my 2 cents.
But yeah, I mean, but I certainly have no problem with bringing in the other Shazam villains, the other classic villains, the other classic characters, the other Fawcett characters that are out there. But we've not really seen a lot of the character interacting with different villains in the DC universe that he doesn't normally interact with.
Mhm.
And that's the fun of it to me is, and Dan's seen this with World's Finest. I mean, that's the reason that you've got, you know, Supergirl and Robin together, is because we've never seen them together. That's why the Doom Patrol's in World's Finest, because
Mhm.
Batman and the Doom Patrol, we've never seen that before. So same with Shazam. Like let's have real fun and put him with some of the DC characters that are fun to do, but he's never met before.
And to that point, Dan, are there any characters that you haven't gotten a chance to draw yet that you would love the opportunity to do so?
I think Mark is working on it because I have,
Yeah.
I think I'm drawing almost every character now. In
I got a list
World
early
Finest
on.
and-
Yeah.
yeah. But yeah, there's a lot of new characters every issue, and that's something that I really like. A lot of characters that I don't know, and yes, I think it's I feel like I'm drawing the Justice League sometimes, and that's something that I really like. Yeah.
You have a way. Let me pop in here for a second. I don't want to take the mic away from the people who are hosting this thing, but
No.
I just want to say one of the things that I really admire about Dan is that he can take the corniest looking supervillains from the 60s and make them look awesome without fail. I didn't think you could do the torpedo, the shark, and the whatever, the three who fight the Teen Titans in the last day. I didn't know you could do that with those guys and make them look cool, but you did.
Yeah, I did. I didn't know too. It was when I saw the designs, it was like, oh, okay, that's going to be difficult, but it was fun, and I think, yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was about to ask, Dan, what is your research process, or what's the process that you do when it comes to a character that you're not familiar with?
I just Google it and try to see as much image that I can, so I can see the different like interpretations.
Mhm.
Then I just try to do my own thing with the things that I like in my head, what I think it looks cool. And sometimes I change little things because of that, but I also try to maintain the same feeling. So yeah, I also use a lot of action figures. So
Oh,
yeah, and
interesting.
I use a lot of action figures for everything. So yeah.
Sure.
I also use a lot of action figures, but I'm not drawing anything. It's weird.
Do too. I just get them, put
Just
them on the shelf.
imagine and crash them together.
I use trading cards. I like to, if I'm writing like a scene with a bunch of different superheroes, I just put the trading cards out in front of me, because that way, like chess pieces, I can make sure that everybody gets play. Like if they're all visually in front of me, I can remember, oh, Aquaman hasn't had anything to do for a page, or oh, I haven't given Wonder Woman any dialogue for the last 2 pages. It's just having the chess pieces in front of me is really important.
Do you ever feel guilty when you look over to one that you haven't been in, and you're like, I have to shoehorn them in?
Yeah, Aqualad, because nobody knows what to do with Aqualad. Poor kid. Yeah.
So Mark, you are, as we know, the #1 Superman fan. You know that character intimately, and Shazam or Captain Marvel, at various points in his history has been sort of a Superman analog, or vice versa even. When you're writing both of them, or you're trying to really distinguish one character from the other, where are you sort of leaning into for Captain Marvel that you're maybe leaning away from in Superman, or vice versa?
There's more of a childlike quality to the Captain. And that's one of the approaches, is trying to remember that it's Billy first, and as opposed to a grown man, Clark Kent. But beyond that, I also remember the powers. I also try to make a point of, in every issue, of pointing out that they're not Superman's powers. We have a big thing in issue 2 where he's growling about how there's no, he wishes there were gods with X-ray vision. Why didn't he get that? You know, but because I want to keep, I want people to remember. And I also, with the powers, I also try in every issue to make sure that one of those, like each of those powers is used once if I can do it. Because again, I just want to remind readers where these powers come from and what he's all about.
Makes sense. And Dan, visually, I mean, obviously the costumes are different, but is there something when you're, drawing facial expressions or poses or something else that gives you a hook into, the Captain versus Superman?
Yes, I try to do this classic image that I seen about Shazam when he has his eyes like very close, and sometimes
Very
it is
squinty,
just and sometimes it is like only a round dot. So I try to do that kind of thing sometimes to remind people or to remind myself what I want to feeling. And I also make I think his nose is a little raw. I don't know how to say it. It's bigger. Is different than the way that I do Superman. But yeah, I try to do my best to draw them different, but it's very difficult.
Yeah, but you do it. I mean, I also think your Superman is a little more broad-shouldered and a little beefier and a little more muscular than your Captain, I think.
Oh, okay. That's cool.
I didn't know if it was by design or accident.
Maybe something that I had in my head because
maybe so.
Maybe but because in my head Superman is super big and super muscular and super strong, so I know Shazam is too, but maybe I don't draw it the same way. But I wasn't aware that I was doing that.
Well, keep doing it. I mean, it's great. So.
Yeah, I think the difference comes across on the page, actually. Yeah. And maybe it's just the material or what have you, but there's definitely a more innocent quality, I guess, to the Captain, and sort of rosy cheeked, I guess, if you will, quality. So I think you've done a great job in distinguishing too.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, I have to say, when reading World's Finest, your interpretation of Metallo was just bananas in the best possible way. It didn't have that kind of the animated series feel, but it wasn't. It really had this kind of Terminator, half flesh ripped off look, and real gnarly feel to it. And it was really cool because that character kind of, it's either hit or miss, and that one really hit, and really made a badass, look to him. So that was really cool.
Thank you. I was thinking in Terminator when I was drawing it.
Yes, yeah. When you just see half the face and the robot other half, and then just the the kryptonite core in the middle was just awesome. I wanted to ask about the Rock of Eternity, and that has become kind of Shazam's Fortress of Solitude,
clubhouse.
Yeah, and kind of fell in line with the movie. He's got all this stuff there. And Dan, for you, how was drawing all that, by the way?
Mark gave me some directions. He told me one of the things that he wanted to be in there. Then I just had a little fun, including a little thing that I thought that maybe a kid will have in his room. But yeah, it was something that Mark told me what he wanted, and then I just tried to explore that a little bit.
Yeah, I think I asked for the giant bowling alley, and he kind of went from there. I mean, Dan gets it. That to my mind, the stuff that he has in the Rock of Eternity is the stuff that any kid his age would be interested in, but bigger, more massive, more super looking, right? So he doesn't play with, he doesn't bowl like you and I would bowl. He bowls with a bowling ball that's like 6 feet high and stuff.
Will the his lair, Rock of Eternity, play a more pivotal role in the series going forward too?
Yes, actually, Freddy starts poking around there in issue 2, even though he shouldn't be, and there are consequences.
Okay, cool. Because that was something I appreciated about the movie, in all its silliness. To see the Rock of Eternity, such a major thing, and they open doors and there's this other room with all this other stuff in there. I mean, it was great. It was a great part of it. So I'm glad that this is going to be, I'm looking forward to seeing that being incorporated, because it never really gets touched on. At least not that I can recall. It's more or less like, okay, here are the 7 deadly sin statues, and this is where the wizard is, but there's a big rock of eternity.
But there's one other big important thing about it, which is that, and this is from the Golden Age, which is that from the Rock of Eternity, you can go to anywhere, past, present, or future.
Right.
So that's something that we'll play with down the road.
Okay.
Because that was always in the 50s.
So he can go back to the past and play with World Finest.
Yes, he can.
There's the cross.
There's the tie-in.
There we go.
Tie-in right there.
Mark, I'm curious, when you're writing dialogue for a youth character, a child character, how do you balance between not making them sound silly, but also maintaining that this is a child speaking, it's not an adult speaking?
Right. I wish I had a better answer, but it really is just I can hear the voice in my head.
Okay.
That's a lot of it. And in terms of then slang or colloquialisms, I try to stay away from a lot of that stuff if I can, only because that stuff doesn't age well, right? Kid slang does not age well. Things that were cool to say 5 years ago sound stupid now. And you don't hear many teenagers walking around talking about how lit anything is right now. So if there are places where I've made up slang, and my editor calls me and goes, wait, what is this word? Well, you get it. You understand what I meant. So, it'll catch on. Who knows? But that's a long answer to your question, but it really is just, I can hear the voices in my head for every single one of these characters. Like, I just know what they sound like to me.
You don't test out. Go ahead, Dan.
No, Mark knows this character so well that he just hear their voices in the head. Yeah. I understand, because when I'm reading the script, when Batman speaks, I hear Batman voice, and so I figured that that's something that similar to what he thinks when he's writing. He just knows the voices for everyone.
Yeah.
I forever have Kevin Conroy's voice in my head for no matter what Batman.
That's the voice that I have.
Yeah.
Well, I wanted to ask a question about going forward, and very general, about what fans who have already consumed #1 and maybe are reading it again and again until #2 comes out. But what do we have to look forward to without obviously spoiling major surprises? But what can we look forward to as the series goes on?
Well, the first 5 issues is one arc. It's basically that's the Meet the Captain arc. And this is the one where, as you've seen at the end of issue 1, something weird is taking a hold of the Captain for a brief moment at the end of issue 1. And something similar happens in issue 2 that is not anger, but it's something else. And then what you're seeing is there are forces, I'm trying to be very vague about it, but there are forces that are sort of warring for control over him. And the answer of who that would be is pretty obvious, actually. But it's each of these characters that is sort of trying to push and pull, play tug of war with the character. They all have their own specific strengths, but their own specific weaknesses. And that's kind of what's coming out with these when the captain blows up or the captain ends up being reckless or what have you. That is Patton Oswalt. That is purely, and I make no bones about this, I had a conversation at a party with Patton Oswalt, and he asked me a question about the book, and I didn't have an answer, but it sparked something in me that gave me, he didn't give me the plot for the issue, but he asked just the right question that made me think about, oh, well, we could do this and this and this. And I'd love to talk about that in like 5 months from now. Mm-hmm. But all I can say right now is thank you, Patton Oswalt, for giving me a hook for that first arc.
Mike, make a note of that, please. 5 months from now. Yeah. Mark Waid, Patton Oswalt.
Okay. Ask me about, yeah.
Because I just want to know about talking to Patton Oswalt, because he's just...
Oh, he's great.
Absolutely. Yeah. Just fantastic and just such a comic fan.
Such a comics fan. And then beyond that, within that 5 issues, like we've said, Gorillas and Gorilla City coming up in issue 3. Gargowax, the Doom Patrol villain who is the Emperor of the Moon, that's issue 4. Captain Marvel ends up I call him Captain Marvel too. The captain ends up starting a war between the Moon and Gorilla City, which is not something he meant to do. And then beyond that, we've got, I don't want to spoil anything, we've got some plans for the next few issues beyond that. Dan knows that it's one of his pet characters that he wants to draw, that I wanted to figure out how to put them in World's Finest, but I couldn't tonally figure out a way to do it. And then it suddenly occurred to me, oh man, Shazam's the perfect place for that character. Dan, you remember who I'm talking about?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So also this is going to be the first time that I draw gorillas. I haven't.
Yes.
So
I'm sensing some concern about this.
Yeah.
Gorillas, huh?
And when he was describing the war and the gorillas, I was in my head like, what?
You're like, oh, yeah, okay,
yeah.
gorillas, sure.
Yeah. A whole city. You get to draw a whole Gorilla City in issue 3.
Different kind.
No problem.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm glad I walked you off the edge there. And Dan, anything else you're, again, without spoilers, you're looking forward to or can tell us about?
Other than gorillas?
This character that Mark is trying to put into the book, that's something that I really look forward.
Yeah.
It's going to be fun.
Okay.
Can I ask about an possible elephant in the room, which is, I'll just name the character Black Adam. Is that character on the shelf, or is that a possibility for down the line?
It's a possibility for down the line. I can't imagine that they wouldn't cross paths at some point. But right now, Christopher Priest is doing his series at DC, so I didn't want to step on that. Right. And then the next job will be, if we do manage to put those characters together, how do we do it in a way that treats Black Adam with the sort of solemnity and the sort of grimness that he brings with him, and not screw up the tone of the Shazam book at the same time. So that's going to be the puzzle.
Look, The Rock is not involved, so you don't have to worry.
He's not going to come visit me in my home. Yeah,
he's done, so don't worry.
You've got Patton Oswalt in your corner. Don't worry.
And the man I put Henry Cavill in my comic. Right.
Yeah. Well, let's not get started on that. This has been really interesting. Very fun discussion. I want to thank you both for taking the time to discuss. I mean, look, this is just one issue, and we spoke about it for an hour, so this is awesome. Thank you both for taking the time out of your day. I mean, I know, Dan, you're busy cranking out gorillas and, various issues of this book. So thank you very much.
Dan's time is more valuable. No, Dan's time is more valuable than mine, because he could have drawn an entire page in the time he took to do this interview.
No, I see the reflection on his glasses. He's doing that now. I mean, he's doing
I know he is.
Dan, let me ask you.
That was the reason that I was late, because I wanted to finish one page. So
That's
that's
probably even more important than our.
Yeah, trust me. Let me ask you a kind of a shop question, Dan. Do you prefer like your method of drawing? Do you do like regular traditional pen to paper, or pencil to paper, what have you, or do you do digital type of work?
Shazam is all digital
Okay.
because I couldn't find the time to do some of the pages traditional. But World Finance is the main pages with a big Batman or with a big Superman. Those pages I try to do it traditional.
Okay.
So it's it's like I don't know, a big percent of the comic is traditional, and there are a few pages that are traditional.
Do you prefer one over the other?
I like the both for what they are. I like that I can be faster and that I have more time when I do things digital, but I like the feeling and the textures and everything that I can do, and the way that I treat the characters when I do it traditional. So it's different. I like it both, but I'm happy doing a few pages traditional and a few pages digital. I wouldn't feel good if I do all the pages digital, and I couldn't make it if I do all the pages traditional. So
Mm-hmm.
yes, and I feel this is I have like a good balance.
I guess, considering the type of work the way work is done nowadays, at some point or another, it ends up becoming a digital piece because, just the nature of the beast. You do your scans, eventually it gets into a digital form, and then there's room for touching up here and there. But I know some people just swear by, just the technology. They can just do the tablets and go right from there. I can't. I mean, there's just something about that tactile feel of a pencil to paper, or a marker to paper. It's just way different, just much more satisfying. So sorry.
Well, I would say, I mean, if I can just jump in here for a second, I'm sorry, Dan, I didn't mean to step on you. I was going to brag on you again.
No, I was going to say that, yeah.
I was going to say that a lot of times people work digitally because it's so much easier to make changes.
Right.
And stuff. But the beauty of Dan, he doesn't really have to do that very often, because Dan is smart enough, and I thank him for this every single day. He'll do 4 or 5 pages like stick figure breakdowns to send to us, just to make sure that everything's in place and that everything makes sense. And 99% of the time the answer is that looks great. And so he doesn't really have to make a whole lot of changes once he's drawn it. But yeah, that's why a lot of people work digitally, is because it's just so much easier to move things around and change and switch.
Mm-hmm. Very interesting. Yeah, I find that process fascinating.
It is a lot of easier with digital. So yeah, you can like do more stuff in the day. But if you do some stuff traditional, you can sell the art and everything. So that's something that is important too. So yeah.
Interesting.
Well, guys, before we wrap and talking a little bit about the future again, Mark, you've had a couple of new DC projects announced, including the World's Finest Teen Titans spinoff.
Yep.
Which is great, but it kind of begs the question now, with 2 books in the same universe, are we facing the dawn of the Waid verse?
Look, if I can carve out that little corner of the DC publishing line, I am all for it. We've been talking about a third World's Finest book to go with Titans and to go with Batman, Superman. We've got a couple of choices and nothing's locked down, but I really enjoy being in that corner where, with all respect to what's going on in the modern continuity and all the love of what's going on, because I read the DC comics as they come out and I love what they're doing, but it's nice to be sort of over in this corner where I don't have to worry about, where is Superman on the planet this month? No, he's on World. Or is Batman in the Batcave? No, he's not in the Batcave these days. So I get to play with all the classic elements. So if I can be in that corner, I think that's where I live. I think that's the best place for me to live.
Well, speaking on behalf of the fans, we're all for it.
Thank you.
We look forward to more.
Absolutely.
And if I could get Dan to draw 3 books a month.
Come on, Dan.
Maybe if the project is the right one, maybe I can consider it.
You just just tell me what DC character you want to draw, and we'll do a book. Just tell me. Not right this second. Think about it. But do you want to do whatever you want to do? World's Finest, Metal Man. I don't know. Whatever. You just let me know. I'm sure we can work it out.
There was the least amount of kids and gorillas, probably.
Yeah, no,
right.
Don't worry. Do what's it? Booster Gold and Blue Beetle. Come on, bring back the Blue and Gold. That'd be great.
Oh yeah.
See,
Booster
there
Gold.
we go.
And Blue Beetle.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry.
No. It's everybody who reads comics. Everybody who reads comics has a dividing line between the stuff they loved as a kid and the stuff they love as an adult. And my dividing line is Firestorm. I don't dislike Firestorm. I don't dislike anything that's been created after Firestorm. There's been an awful lot of great characters that have been created in the last 40 years. But the emotional attachment that I have is to the ones that I enjoyed when I was a child, and the ones that I think I've been thinking about the most, and the ones I feel like I have something to say with. So I'm sure we could do a bang up Blue and Gold series, but I would have to find a way in, because I've never really spent much time thinking about Booster Gold, for instance. So
fair enough.
So Firestorm is the firewall for you.
that's the fire. Exactly. That's the firewall. That's like pre-Firestorm and post-Firestorm. Yes.
I thought you like it, Firestorm, because you use it in when Batman and Superman did the fusion.
Yeah.
So I thought that you like it. That was
I've grown to like the character, and he shows up in issue 16 too, and in 17. He's going to be in 17. I've grown to like him, but mostly it's because I really love the way you draw that character, so I wanted to use more of it.
I will. Thank you.
That's awesome.
Cool.
So before we go, Dan, do you have social media channels that fans can follow you at?
Yes, I have Twitter and Instagram. I think is Dan Mora, rayita abajo. I don't know how to say it, the
Underscore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And see, it's the same for Instagram and Twitter. I think
Okay.
that's the way to find me.
All right,
Yeah.
cool. And Mark, sir, how about yourself?
Me, I'm Mark Waid on Twitter, except I don't really go there very often. And Instagram, I'm Waid Mark, because there is somebody else out there named Mark Waid who took the name from early on. So I am Waid Mark on Instagram.
We'll find that guy.
Yeah, we're gonna find him,
Yeah.
and then we're gonna.
Apparently, he's a high school football player somewhere. So yeah.
Politely ask him.
Look, you need to change this, kid. I don't know who you.
Yeah.
Please.
All right. Cool. Well, hey guys, this has been a great discussion. Again, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us. For everyone listening, you can expect to hear this episode published during our usual channels on on Apple, Apple Podcasts, Google, Spotify. That'll be coming out this Friday. For everyone who is listening, watching live, thank you so much for joining us, and we'll be sure to see you guys next week. Have a good one.
All right. Take care, guys.
Bye, Shazam.
All right.
Okay.